Welcome to English and the Beauty of Language. My name is Stephen Sharman. This is a brief history of Palestine from ancient times to today. I'm making this video largely for my students who've been hearing about the events in Palestine currently, and I thought I'd give some historical depth to people so that everyone can understand the history of this land, which is very ancient. An ancient land, that's a picture of Mount Sinai there, I believe. Before the formation of the State of Israel in 1948, in the immediate aftermath of World War II, the territory of Palestine was controlled by the British and French, who took the region from the Ottoman Turks in 1918. The Turks ruled Palestine for 500 years from the 16th century AD. Just so you understand, AD means once Jesus has been born. In Australia here, I'm an Australian as teacher and I'm a trained historian with an honours degree in modern history. Obviously, we use the Christian calendar, which begins with the birth of Jesus, and so it's 2024. The February 2024. It's 2024 years since Jesus was born. To this Turkish gentleman here, the Turks ruled Palestine for 500 years before the British and French took it. This is an image, a painting of the fall of Constantinople to the Turks. Prior to the Ottomans, Palestine was ruled by the Arabs for roughly 800 years from the 7th century AD. That image is meant to be a depiction of Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, riding the camel. While before the Arabs, the region was under the governance of the Roman Empire. And you can see there the Romans ruled for over 600 years. The Romans consolidated imperial control of Palestine soon after the lifetime of Jesus Christ, who was born a Jew in Palestine. And there you have a line drawing of the sacking of Jerusalem by the Romans. This happened after Jesus. Rome had effectively annexed Palestine prior to the birth of Jesus, but in the decades after his death, the Jewish kingdom rebelled against the Roman power and was crushed mercilessly by the Romans, as was their way. This is an image on a Roman memorial archway or something, or column, which celebrates the sacking of Jerusalem. You can see the Romans there carting away Jewish loot from Jerusalem. In the declining centuries of the Roman Empire, the Eastern Empire, Byzantium, based in what is now Turkey, remained resilient, but was confronted and finally defeated by the rising tide of Islam, which emerged from the traditional Arab lands to the south in Yemen and today Saudi Arabia, via militant expansion into the ancient lands of Palestine, Persia, Syria, Iraq, which was Babylon, and Egypt, eventually spreading across North Africa into Southeast Asia and Southern Europe. You see Jesus there. I believe that image is from the St. Sophia Cathedral in Istanbul, Turkey, or Constantinople. This is an image of a Byzantine emperor. I believe it's Justinian, but it's got Maximilian or something up top there, but I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Justinian. He was the Eastern Roman emperor who ruled at the time of the full collapse of the Western Roman Empire. So he lived in incredibly tempestuous times, very dangerous, and was a great leader. Now, long before the Roman occupation and colonization of Palestine, the territory was conquered by Moses in 1000 BC. Just think about that for a minute. That means the Jews have been in Palestine for 3,000 years. To give you some context, the Chinese civilization is about 5,000 years old. Ancient Egypt was about 10,000 years ago. And Moses conquered the land that is now Palestine and Israel in 1000 BC. And that's from the beginning of the Iron Age. Moses, the Jewish hero of the Old Testament, who famously led the Jews out of captivity in Egypt long before the birth of Christ, long before the rise of Islam, or the Turks, or the British and French. This is a model of Jerusalem before the Roman sacking. So Palestine was a Jewish land long before Christianity or Islam, and at a time when the people of France and England were primitive tribesmen living in huts and dugouts. And there's an image of the crucifixion. Here's a great picture, a great statue of Moses with the Ten Commandments, with one of the tablets. Further, the ancient Jewish kingdom in Palestine formed a unified and coherent nation. This is the land that was from 3,000 years ago, founded by Moses, King David and Solomon, those guys. It formed a unified and coherent nation unlike many of the subsequent occupants who essentially colonized the region as a territory under occupation without necessarily forming coherent nations. Thus, for much of its existence post the Roman destruction of Jewish Palestine, Palestine has been a territory or region populated by city states rather than nations, heavily influenced by larger neighbours such as Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Persia. By the way, just when I say Persia, today the name is Iran, but it's a very ancient land. I know people from Iran who call themselves Persians. It's a very ancient land, Persia. Um, and here's an image of Jesus in the garden being betrayed by Judas. You can see the Romans coming upon him there. And a rather disdainful Jesus is being kissed by the traitor Judas. Now, this idea that Palestine, after the fall of the Jewish kingdom, was basically a bunch of city states, not really connected into a nation, was certainly the case during the Crusader period, which preceded the rise of the Ottoman Empire. Here we have a beautiful image from one of the churches. I think it's Saint Sophia in Istanbul, of the beautiful Christian Byzantine mosaics and paintings. From 1918 through 1948, Palestine was divided between the British and the French, as we've mentioned before. After those powers defeated the Ottoman Empire in World War One, you see the flag of Turkey there. That's modern day Istanbul. You can see the ancient walls and minarets and things amongst the skyscrapers and things. A little bit of more context and detail about some of the more controversial modern history that many people don't know anything about, and sort of gives you a bit of a feeling of the violence that happens in that area. During the 1940s, the Zionist movement in Palestine, while clamoring for the formation of a Jewish state, pioneered modern terrorist tactics by kidnapping British soldiers and using car bombs to assassinate colonial authorities. And then, while during the 1930s and 40s, the anti Zionist Muslim Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al Husseini, collaborated with Hitler and the Nazis, as well as the fascists in Italy. And that tells you everything you need to know about his attitudes. There you have the beautiful Church of the Sepulchre in Jerusalem, a very holy site to Christians, and I think to Jews. I mean, and I think to Christians and Muslims. Hence, the conflict in Palestine today is not about invasion or occupation, since those involved have roots in Palestine dating back hundreds and some for many thousands of years. The argument is ideological and therefore extremely violent and problematic. Here, just to note, this is a 6th century map of the Eastern Roman Empire under the Byzantines. You can see here on the left how the entire Western Roman Empire, or virtually the entire empire, is gone. And you can see the mention of Goths down here and there, the Empire of the Franks. These are the barbarians, and they see the Saxons up here. England, London over here, Londinium, survives for some time after the collapse of the West because it's so isolated. North Africa is retained by the Byzantines, and here, this is under the reign of Justinian, I think. They managed to hold Italy for some time. But of note down here in the bottom right-hand corner, see Jerusalem and Gaza noted on the map here near Greek Egypt, Memphis and Alexandria. The last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra, the famous figure from the Roman times who married Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, she was a Ptolemy. She was a Greek Egyptian pharaoh, not an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. She was overthrown in the Roman period. Egypt suffered the same fate largely as what Palestine and everywhere else the Romans went. But just of note there, this is from the 6th century, a Roman Byzantine map, and you see Jerusalem and Gaza noted down there. That's exactly where the violence is happening today. So a little note on history. History does not offer a way forward. So there's a myth that history teaches us about the future and the way to handle things in the future. That's not true. It's a myth. History teaches us about the world we live in today. It teaches us about who we are and where we come from. And that is enormously valuable, far more valuable than speculating and guessing about what might happen tomorrow or in 50 or 100 years, which nobody knows. So history doesn't teach us about the future. It doesn't teach us about tomorrow. It teaches us about ourselves right here, right now, and where we come from and why we're here and where we've been. And that's an enormously important thing that everybody should know. One of my fundamental beliefs is that we don't learn enough history, true history, real history, not political history and just the history of wars and things, real history and how to study history in school. And I also believe we've lost philosophy as well. And I think that's a human tragedy. and a cultural and societal tragedy in our world today. Just note here the catapult balls, which I believe this is in Israel, this image, and ancient catapult balls sitting there. I'm not sure exactly where that field, if it's near Jerusalem or where it is, but I believe it's in Palestine. History does not offer a way forward, but does shine a light on the lies of ideologues who spread hate and division by manipulating the ignorant. An ideologue is a belief system that excludes all other beliefs. So it's a form of intolerance. If you like, even intellectual intolerance, cultural intolerance, it can indeed involve racial, gender intolerance. The best examples of ideology in the modern world are Nazism, with their anti Semitic, racist, anti democratic values, based originally in fascism, which came out of Mussolini's Italy, Benito Mussolini in Italy, spread to Franco's Spain and Salazar's Portugal. The other companion ideology, of course, is communism, which is this violent hatred and resentment against anyone who accumulates wealth or significance, power, education, and the destruction of society and the middle class by dragging everybody equally down to the bottom of the ladder. And both of these ideologies end in death camps and concentration camps. It's in the history books. You just have to look it up. Other versions of ideology, which are not necessarily murderous, include things like feminism, environmentalism, and of course religions can be accused of being ideological. That is when one belief system excludes the belief systems of all others. So, thus, knowledge of the factual history can guard us from deceit and the enslavement which is born of ignorance. Thank you.